Order. Will you please call the roll?
Florida.
Here.
Hallie.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Gandy.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
Okay, great. We've got a full house tonight. Any changes to the agenda, council? If not, we'll go to the consent agenda. Approval of the minutes of the January 25th, 2021 council meeting. Approval of February 5th, 2021 payroll in the amount of $122,091.31. Resolution authorizing fund transfers. Approval of park use permits for First Friday's Art Walk. That's a noise exemption. Acceptance of the Arbor Committee minutes. Approval of liquor license for Fairfield Arts and Convention Center and Dollar General, number 7142. Approval of claims in the amount of $754,267.64. We had one claim more than $75,000 to Maxwell Construction in the amount of $443,782.26.
I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved by Ham, second by Anderson. Any other questions, discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Ham.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Gandy.
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
Flournoy.
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Okay, approved unanimously. There are no public forum or appearances tonight, so we'll get right on to our resolution action items and ordinances. The first action item is consideration to set public hearing for fiscal year 21 water main replacement project. We'll set that public hearing for Monday, February 22nd, 2021 at 7 p.m.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by Anderson, second by Flournoy. Any discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Anderson.
Yes.
Flournoy.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Gandy.
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
Thank you. Passed unanimously. Next action item, consideration to set public hearing for South 32nd Street resurfacing project. Again, that will be at our next meeting, Monday, February 22nd, 2021 at 7 p.m.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by Anderson, second by Flournoy. Any discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Anderson.
Yes.
Flournoy.
Yes.
Gandy.
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Thank you. Passed unanimously. Next item, consideration to set public hearing for North 4th Street resurfacing project. Again, this will be Monday, February 22nd at 7 p.m.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Rasmussen, second by Flournoy. Any discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Flournoy.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Gandy.
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Thank you. Passed unanimously. Next item, consideration to set public hearing on our fiscal year 22 max levy. Again, that's for Monday, February 22nd at 7 p.m.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Rasmussen, second by Flournoy. Any discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Flournoy.
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Gandy.
Yes.
Thank you. Passed unanimously. Next action item, consideration of engineering services agreement with FrenchReneker Associates for Burlington Avenue restriping. Stephen?
Yes. We had a lot of discussion about this at the committee meeting just now. And what this agreement is for is to do the design engineering for restriping Burlington Avenue. The tape that is out there now was installed back in 2008 when it was converted from 4 lanes to 3 lanes. And as you can see, it's pretty much reached the end of its useful life. It's getting worn off in lots of places, and you can't really see it in other places. And so the purpose of this agreement is to do the design for putting the tape back down. As a part of that, we're going to look into making the bike lanes, the unofficial bike lanes on Burlington, official with the project, which involves a little bit more treatment at the intersections, and some maybe some more signage in places, and some emblems in the bike lanes. Another issue we're going to look at is the fact that what's striped out there now is a little bit narrow in places to meet the bike lane width requirements. And there's a lot, like I mentioned, there's a lot of discussion about this in the council meeting, in the committee meeting about this. And our agreement is structured a little bit differently than we would normally do it. This is entirely an hourly agreement, and so our concept is we're going to review everything and come up with a conceptual design as to how to fit this all in a safe manner, and then we're going to report back to the council, and then you will be able to decide if you want to proceed with the bike lanes or what you want to do. It may become evident that it's not possible to do safely. So that's why we wanted to do it hourly. That way you would only be paying us for what time we have into the project, and we can stop it if we want to. So I don't know if there's any other questions from people in the council.
Say Safety Committee met prior to council, and this was discussed at length. And there are a number of concerns that come with putting that bike lane in there. And so we've asked Stephen to be prepared if we hit a point where we see it's not going to be safe, or the liability is too high, or the standards change to a point that we don't want to proceed, that we can pull the bike lane portion of that, or bring it to a halt and just proceed with restriping as is. So it was discussed at length prior. Go ahead.
Just one bike lane or one on each side?
One on each side.
So 2 lanes.
Utilizing the unofficial ones that are white striped there now.
Right. That
So
would make the lanes narrower.
that's part of what he's looking at.
Yep,
Because we're
uh-huh.
trying to figure out how to do it with as little impact and grinding as possible, because the grinding will cause for misconception in lanes. Which, like I said, by going hourly with this contract, we can stop at any point and say, stop looking at the bike lane.
Yeah, you can still see where they missed ground by 4th and Burlington.
Yeah, so we plan to get back together in the spring when we can actually see the roads again, and talk to Stephen about the bike lanes again before it would ever go to bed.
What move we approve this agreement?
Okay, moved by Flournoy,
Second.
second by Gandy. Any other discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes,
Hallie,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Thank you, passed unanimously. Next resolution is for tax abatement application for 201 West Jefferson.
I would move we approve the tax abatement for 201 West Jefferson.
Okay, moved by Flournoy,
Second.
second by Gandy. There other discussion or questions? If not, please call the roll.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Anderson,
yes,
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Hallie,
Yes.
Okay, next resolution is consideration of providing for fiscal year 22 financial support of Area 15 Regional Planning Commission in the amount of $4,732. This is 50 cents per capita, and some of the housing, regional housing, area housing goes through there, and so this is a yearly thing that we do.
Can I just ask a question before we vote on this? What projects was Area 15 involved in for the city in the last fiscal year? Anybody? Fiscal year.
I don't believe we've had any in the last fiscal year with them. They do administer, and I assume part of this fund goes toward, they do administer the STBG funds for our roads, and 4th and 32nd are both being funded by that project. The administration is mainly just making sure we get the money. They are not doing any interviews or anything like that during construction. But that's about the only projects that I think of from this last fiscal year.
The other thing that they could do would be like a housing study that we actually need to update, but it still costs us money, but to have them be affiliated with it, it helps us get those projects done.
Were they involved in the awning redesign, the facade redesign a couple years ago?
I don't know, I wasn't here when that happened. They were involved in helping with the grants for the daycare,
Okay.
stuff like that. It's a regional cog that helps us helps governments do things, and typically they do it at a lower cost than going out and hiring an attorney or an attorney firm. Or
I knew what they were, I just hadn't
Yeah.
seen their name come up much this year,
Right.
so.
Probably didn't use them as much this last year, but it's a good thing to be involved in.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by Anderson, second by Gandy. Any other discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Anderson?
Yes.
Gandy?
Yes.
Hallie?
Yes.
Ham?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
Flournoy?
Yes.
Toohill?
Yes.
Thank you. Passed unanimously. Next resolution, consideration of providing for fiscal year '22 financial support of regional planning affiliations in the amount of $1,798, and this is where roads are administered through and we get highway money.
I move approval of supporting the RPA to the tune of $1,798.
Okay. Moved by Flournoy, second by Toohill. Any other questions?
Yes. Could you walk me through, I'm not seeing how we get to, the city is agreeing to donate contribute $1,798 when we start with an estimated 2.36 or $2.38 million in grant funds. I'm not seeing how we get to that point.
Melanie,
Molly,
do you
can you help
have,
me with that one?
Is this a per capita as well?
It's the
How's that bottom up?
financial support of regional planning affiliation for the RPA. That's the road one.
Okay,
How do we come up with our contribution dollar amount?
no clue. Not involved in this part at all. Sorry.
They just bill us like the,
I think it's per capita, like
Well, it says,
the mayor
if
had
I'm
said on the other one, but I can't answer that.
okay, it says here, there's estimated 2.38 million federal highway funds, and of which Fairfield's estimated share is 198,000. Then it says the IDOT requires Area 15 RPC, including to contribute 20% of local match toward the annual IDOT planning grant, and the fiscal 2022 local match requirement is $21,000. Then it says the governing body of Fairfield is a member of the RPA 15, and its apportioned share is $1,798. So I'm not sure how it goes from 21,000. I'm not sure. I don't see how you get any of these numbers except the first one.
I will ask that question.
The 198,000 is the allocation that we get every year from the DOT, and that's based off of population.
Okay.
I know that much.
Okay.
So if you look at the first whereas, it tells you that it's designated into a number of counties, and we're one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So my guess is that that's based on our population, so that's where a portion,
That's what I was gonna guess. but I wanted to
yeah,
make sure I
our
had-
portion of the 21,205 is 1798.
And this is separate from Area 15, right?
It's housed in the same place, but
It is, okay.
it's a different section.
What's the 21,205? It says what is that? As an estimate of 20% of the local match of the annual IDOT planning grant?
Between all the counties that are listed in the first section.
I'm still not understanding it.
It's
Maybe-
talking about proportionally shared.
Yeah, I
so
get that part.
That would be the population and usage and all the other things.
Okay, if somebody could walk me through how you get, or maybe not now, but walk me through how you get to $1,798, I'd like to see it, because I'm not
I will
seeing
get
it.
that answer
Okay.
for you.
oh, do you want to table that till next meeting? Is there a hurry to get this done? Till we get the answer?
I would motion that we table it to the next meeting so we can get more details on how that number's reached.
Okay.
Second?
Okay, moved by Anderson, second by Gandy to table this till the next meeting. Any other discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Anderson?
Yes.
Gandy?
Yes.
Hallie?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
Ham?
Yes?
Toohill?
Yes.
Flournoy?
yes.
Okay. Next resolution. Consideration declaring an official intent under Treasury Regulation 1.150-2 to issue debt to reimburse the city for certain original expenditures paid in connection with specified projects. This is $1.5 million on roads. Melanie, do you want to say anything about projects or anything?
Okay. This is for the larger bond project that we are intending to do. That includes 23rd from Burlington to Tyler, C from Burlington to Broadway or Briggs, and 9th from Washington to Burlington. And so this allows us to reimburse that engineering with the bond proceeds when that time comes around.
Also note, when we're planning on doing this borrowing, this is also, we're planning on leaving our debt service levy at a stable level in the future. So this is part of that. We have some debt coming off where our geo debt limit is, we're sitting at about 30 to 35% of our overall geo debt limit. And we want to maintain that so that the debt levy overall for the foreseeable future stays stable, rather than, okay, our debt service levy drops this year, and then, okay, next year we're going to do a lot of borrowing, so then the debt service levy goes up. Allowing us to keep a debt service levy, a stable levy, allows for people to plan. It gives people an idea what that is going to stay, so we can keep them and maintain a overall level asking levy each year, rather than having it jump up and down because of our debt service.
So we just do a resolution like this once a year for all debt that we might want to incur in this fashion?
That would be too easy, and we can't do that.
Because this doesn't mention the specific project, nor how much or anything like that. Wouldn't we just do this the first meeting of every year and then we'd be covered?
Each project has to have its own.
I say the auditors got us on this couple audits ago where they told us we had to do it as the project come and go.
This doesn't mention any project though.
I know.
All right. I just thought it would be easier.
It would be easier.
All right, I move we approve.
Second.
Moved by Floney, second by Anderson. Any other discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Hallie,
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Passed unanimously.
Just, can I stop for just a second? Is this similar to what we did under consent agenda where it was resolution authorizing fund transfers? Is that kind of what, no, different? Different, okay.
Okay, next, ordinance 1196 is the third and final reading. This is Fairfield Municipal Codes 20.08 and 20.34 regarding general and manufacturing home residence district. Melanie, do you want to say anything at this point? Okay. So this is the third and final reading.
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by Rasmussen, second by Flournoy. Any discussion?
We need our public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Sorry, before we go there. Thank you, Michael. I'll open a public hearing regarding that. Does anybody want to speak to this ordinance?
Okay, I guess I will. I'm not here to try to prevent this from happening, but in a conversation I had with Andy Andy Hallman at the Southeast Iowa Union, you may have seen the newspaper article, and Councilman Michael Alley called me about it, and I had suggested to Andy, he was asking about tiny homes in Fairfield, and I said, well, I'm not, a huge fan of tiny homes, but I really like houses between 500 and 1,000 square feet. And I said that perhaps in the future, Fairfield might allow something around 600 square feet. So he put it in the newspaper, and Michael had a conversation with me, and I think that it might be something to consider. I have looked at a lot of different designs of about 600 to 700 square feet, and it certainly there's some really beautiful homes that could be built. I don't know how much of a demand there would really be for something that much smaller. But if this is a time to consider it, it might be something to be discussed. So I have a number of them here if you wanted to look at them, or I don't know what the procedures are, if there needs to be a separate consideration outside of the council.
So yes, I did call Don because I figure we're at this point, and if there was any amendment to be made, now is the time to make it. The whole purpose of changing this section of the code was to unleash development. So I asked Don a straightforward question: would going under the 720, which is our current, what the code says, minimum, help you develop? And he said, yeah, it could. So that's why he's here. I did talk to John Morrissey because I was curious if this level of change at this point would trigger a review by planning and zoning. And John said, yes, it's substantial enough. If we change it from, say, 720 to 700, we could probably get away with that here on council. But if you do something that's somewhat substantial, it needs to go back to planning and zoning so they can review it. So that's basically, if we want to take Don's recommendation, that's what it would do. And then come back we just table it tonight and come back and make our third and final reading, first meeting in March. I did talk to the planning, city planner of Iowa City today, and apparently Iowa City has no minimum square footage requirements. They have a different problem than we do. They have too much new development that's too large and expensive for a portion of the population. So they're looking at amending their zoning for these future developments to not allow the lot sizes to be too large. So they're actually looking to encourage smaller house development. City of Cedar Rapids, their minimum square footage for a single-family home is 500 square feet. And then the city of Des Moines moved in the other direction, and I think they made theirs 1,000 or just over 1,000, which prompted backlash from builders and residents who want to do smaller. So this is a topic of a lot of cities in Iowa right now. If we're going to do anything smaller than our standard 800, which this 720 already is, if we're going to go smaller than 720, this would be the zone to do it in because of all the reasons we're already doing all this, is the small lot sizes. And my understanding of some of the staff's concern is if you go too small, you kind of miss out on a chance to get a decent assessed value for the tax roll. So 720 to 600, while it might not seem like a big deal, could potentially have a lower valuation. So these are all the things to consider, and here we are at our last meeting, our last reading of this ordinance. But if I told Don, if you're going to speak up now before we finish the process, or we could finish it tonight and tell Don, if you want to go smaller, go to the Board of Adjustment and get a variance if you want to roll the dice on that. So
That is where I have questions of where those assessed values would be if we went into those ultra smaller, meaning around that 600 to 700 compared to if it's 1,000. I realize this is all just kind of going from theory, or it's been tried, but yet now it's going to a bigger concept. And but I was just wondering what that would leave us in the future if the interest were to die out with a trend, or what are we seeing here that would generate something for a little bit more longevity?
We haven't had a chance to look at that.
Okay.
And that's the city, that's one of the things the city staff is concerned about, is we haven't had a chance to look at where is that line of demarcation where, when does it become not a good move for the city to do that?
Right.
And quite frankly, right now, we don't have this time to do it.
Okay.
So I think we did a lot of hard work in looking at this ordinance the way it is. And I understand Don's request, and we actually granted Don's request with what we were doing in this one. And to go back and say, well, all right, well, we're gonna change it again for this. I'd like to see in the future, I'm not opposed to going smaller, but I'd like to see that more in a planned urban development rather than in a area. You know, we did a planned urban development with the, what's that, accelerated learning? No, the New Chicago in the,
Right.
with those where, hey, we want to have this small area and we want to do these, what were they, townhomes or something? I forget, kind of like condos where they did 2 or 3 houses right next to you, and they were actually smaller. How big were they? Do you remember? I don't remember either.
480 square feet.
How much?
480.
400 square feet, but that's in a planned urban development where we're just going to put these in this area, and this is the plan. So
Right. I realize
I
this all
see the
got started
request,
because of the
but I
lots
also-
that you're working with.
right, I also see where we've already put the work into this, and I have a hard time saying let's stop and we've done this for the request. I don't want to go back and do that at that point, but I mean,
No,
I
we
guess
don't-
again that's up to you all.
The New Chicago one, that was 480 square feet per floor with multiple floor. And you're talking about 500 square foot, one level?
600.
600.
600
yeah.
square foot, one single level.
Yes.
And these had shared walls, right? They weren't
Yes.
Yes.
standing separately, they were shared
They were
walls,
shared.
Yes.
more like
So then
apartments.
it'd been more of a 900 square foot building
Right.
with 2 residences.
Here you're talking about a 600 square foot building sitting on a lot by itself with a front yard, side yard, et cetera.
Right.
So you really drive down the valuation for that lot below a point where you can't pay for the utilities that you want to put in front of that lot. That's what the concern is.
So,
Ac-
oh, go ahead, Don.
Well, actually, I'm really quite comfortable with the 720. This 600 square foot idea just kind of came up in this conversation, and then it was in the newspaper. And I had suggested it as something that the city could consider in the future for the really small lots in town, because there are a lot of empty lots in town that are even smaller than what's in the Parsons College addition in the West End. And it's going to be, well, an 800 square foot home on 3,000 or 4,000 square foot lot is, you know, I mean, it would work, but that would be your opportunity, I think, to do 600 square feet.
But we've also okayed 500 square feet ground floor if you go up more than one floor.
Yes, correct,
So those will fit fine on those lots
right.
without devaluing the property as much,
I agree. Yep.
which I think is the solution to that. I mean, you know,
Multi-level.
yeah.
Well, yes, the only argument against that is that when you've got a 500 square foot ground floor and another 500 on the second floor, you've got a 1,000 square foot home, which is a lot more expensive than a
But
600 square
But it
foot.
doesn't have to be 500 on the second floor.
Pardon me?
It doesn't have to be 500 on the second floor. I mean, it could be
Oh.
a small cape or something like that.
Oh, I guess it could be. That's an idea. Yep. Yeah. So again, I'm completely okay with the 720, but it was suggested that maybe I come here and throw out this idea.
Are there any other comments from the public? So if not, why don't I close the public hearing and then the council can talk a little bit more? Okay, so I'll close the public hearing. Council, any more discussion?
I like what Don said just now about this as a consideration, as a possibility to go smaller than 720 on certain lots. That would be something that we could look at. I don't know how exactly that could be written in the code, but again, just to clarify, a tiny home would be 400. Some places call 500 still a tiny home. So what he's recommending is not tiny home size, but it is definitely, you know, yeah, it's smaller because a 600 square foot, that's like 20 by 30. A 720 is 20 by 36. So when you think of it that way, you go six more feet in one direction. But again, we're getting into smaller than Fairfield's seen before. And if, if this council or the community is uncomfortable with smaller homes like that for whatever reason, stick with 720 for now. And
I think what we could do, we could look at the older, smaller lots as a different animal in general. I think the ordinance that we have in place is good for the area, which is what we were shooting for. And looking at those smaller lots that are essentially unbuildable, we could address that and we've been talking about looking at our building code in the future anyway. So I think that's something maybe we could look at in the future or in the near future, because we're finally getting done with our code now.
Right.
And then look at our planning and our P&Z and stuff for specifically that type of reason in the future.
And that actually goes in line with something I found was interesting when I was researching and looking up what Iowa City has. They have a minimum open space. So if you have a lot, they say you can't build the entire lot and not leave any open space. They have like a 500 square foot open space minimum. So in that way, when you get into some of these small lots Don's talking about, the really small ones, in a sense, you're necessitating a smaller footprint, at least a footprint, if you're going to go vertical from there. But it just opens up. It's an interesting conversation. I just figured, since it was out in the public, kind of slightly misquoted, but out in the public, that
Never happened.
might as well discuss it. The 720 that we chose here, it wasn't something that was actually deeply thought out. It was the lower of the two numbers that was in the existing R5 code. It was 750 and 720, and we're like, well, let's just make it 720. But 720 isn't some number that any city staff have researched to any capacity at all that I'm aware of to say that's some sort of ideal number. So in that regard, it's not, I don't know how much work we're asking to look into. Can we do a little smaller? But at the same time, if the council just wants to be done with this for now, Don's saying you can work with 720.
I feel like the committee that reviewed this, I gave it a lot of thought, and this ordinance, presented to us, it fit the need for the area that we were addressing at the time. So I'd like to see the effort that's gone into this not get delayed further. Personally, I'd like to see this move on, and then, like you said, either in the near future or down the road, or whether it's this ordinance or the building.
In a PUD or
Yeah, something.
in something,
But
yeah.
I feel like we really listened and addressed the need that was brought before us with regards to the Parsons subdivision. So,
And John Morrissey, do you have any legal opinion on this particular topic? That was a loaded question, wasn't it?
Yeah, I did talk to Michael about this, and I guess the thing is, you can always amend through your readings, but if you substantially change the substantive part of whatever it is that you're adopting to the point where, in this situation, works out to about a 20% difference if you go from 720 to 600. And that to me is a substantial change. Dropping it from 720 to 700 probably not a substantial change. But the whole idea was the 720 was coming off as something previously that had been the smallest it could be. And right now, I think, if anything, next time we look at another area, maybe we think about the fact that we kind of trended downward. And I don't know if the Board of Adjustment would grant a variance on something substantially less without an awful good reason as far as not being able to use the site otherwise. They've got a certain amount of criteria that they have to make a finding of beyond a reasonable doubt about. And so Board of Adjustment isn't always the solution, but the way you could handle this tonight is either, go ahead, your vote is gonna decide this in the end anyway, as far as whether you wanna go through the third reading and pass it, Or I suggested to Michael that if he had votes to table it and take it back to planning and zoning and talk about 600 feet, that would delay things a month, but I don't know if it would throw this thing off the tracks as far as still getting it done by late spring, which I understand is the objective. So in this building season yet. So those are the options I see, and I don't have an opinion as far as whether 600 or 700 is better, but anyway, I respect Don's efforts as far as building smaller housing. The other thing about Parsons College, we've had some experiences in the past. We had to cooperate with the county to eventually annex the Parsons College addition because it didn't have central water and sewer. Back in the 80s, it was horseshoed out of the city limits. And so when it came in, I remember John Brown was our city administrator then. He was quite frustrated that it wasn't ever going to tax flow as far as he referred to it because the tax base on 50 by 100 lots, no matter what he tried to imagine being put there, wasn't going to carry it. Now that later on didn't prove to be true because people would put a couple lots together and they'd build a nice little brick home with a chain link fence around it, and it would carry the value to support that. But that hasn't happened on the majority of the lots out there, so you still have that valuation issue that's been discussed.
Can I ask you one question? There's a third option, and that is if I make it an amendment to go from 720 to 700, do you feel like that's something that could be done tonight on the council level without triggering P&Z review?
Well, you need a motion and a second. You can try that out. I don't think that would put it subject to challenge as far as being way off from what planning and zoning recommended.
Yeah.
You're not putting something in front of the group that is too far afield. I guess that's the way I see it.
Well, to me, I don't want to burden city staff with having to research this before P&Z and give them the information they're going to be looking for. I've gone to a number of P&Z meetings these last few months, and I know they do expect city staff to give them information. And so in the spirit of not burdening them, but at the same time, maybe making a slightly rounder number that is a little closer to 600 than 720, I'll make the motion to pass this with the amendment of in section 6 under A, one-story single-family dwelling shall contain no less than 700 square feet, knocking off 20 of them. Of ground floor area excessive of open porches, garages, or steps.
What was the committee that considered this? Was it economic development?
Yes.
Which I chair.
All right. What is your, Katie, what was your point?
I feel like that we gave great consideration to what was presented to us to get the momentum going, to get the ordinance change in place by spring. So some of the houses that were presented to us could go ahead and start being built. Or at least it would open up the door for those houses too. And I'd like not to stall this ordinance by making such a big leap backwards down to say 600 or whatever, that we lose the momentum, because we seriously, I mean, we spent the entirety of a pretty lengthy meeting reviewing this, and we were all on the same page. We all thought it was a great idea, and we were trying to get it done so we could look at building by spring.
But the 700 feet?
What you have before you is what the committee came up with, which was 720.
That was what was in the existing code.
Yeah, we just took the smaller number that was already out there.
I guess I'm asking if it moves, if the motion were carried to 700 feet, would that be, that's not a big change?
As long as we don't have to start the process over, that's what I'd like to see us avoid.
Well, John Morris is telling us we can pass it tonight with that
Is
amendment.
700.
Yep.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so that's the amendment. So, any more discussion on that? So let's call the roll. Do I need to call roll on that amendment, and then we'll go back to the original, correct?
Okay.
Okay, so it was moved by Hallie, second by Gandy to change to 700 square feet. So call the roll on that.
Hallie,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Okay, that was passed unanimously
So
to
now I'll
move it
move to-
to
yep.
700 square foot. Now we'll go back to the original. And I think we had Rasmussen moving that and Flornay seconded. Is that correct?
Yes.
I don't remember anymore.
Okay, so go ahead and call the roll on that.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Hallie,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
All right, thank you for your patience on that and getting through that. The next ordinance, consideration of amended floodplain ordinance. Again, we need to open the public hearing. Does anybody want to discuss that or make a comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. And Melanie, you want to talk about this a little bit?
All right, so in short, the Iowa Department of Natural Resources is asking us to pass this. A couple years ago, they updated the flood maps for the entire county. And so with that, they have asked all the cities in Iowa to update their flood plain ordinance. There is no substantial change to the ordinance from what we have. I should say no substantial change that affects the citizens. Most of the changes related to definitions and how the elevations are defined, and stuff that DNR does and provides to us. Fairfield has been very good about not allowing people to construct in the floodplain, so we have very few homeowners that this affects. And for your information, the way that we do handle properties that are within the floodplain, if they have an existing structure on them, their file in the permit, in the building office is blue. So if they come and they want to build a shed, that's our indication that they're in the floodplain, and we need to make sure that that shed is okay. And then if it's a new build, staff is kind of aware of where the floodplains, where the issues might be, so that if someone is interested in a new lot, we make sure to double check where the floodplain is. Cody Circle and Royal Oaks are probably our two most impacted residential areas as far as the floodplain. So again, this is something DNR is asking us to do. Nothing that's really going to be affecting the citizens. It's updating the terminology to meet DNR's current guidelines and definitions.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Hallie, second by Toohill. Any other discussion or questions? Not, please call the roll.
Hallie,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Next is an ordinance to amend the pay compensation of the mayor and the council. This is the first reading. I'll open the public hearing. Is there any comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and council can discuss.
I would suggest that the clause relating to city council members, the language be the same as the clause relating to the mayor's compensation. The words "but" after the clause "but in the event of," etc., that should simply be removed. That's a little bit confusing because the statement is the salary shall not exceed $2,400. Well, it's not actually true. It's $2,400 subject to salary raise increases as the city staff receives. So the clause after the word "but" should, I think, should be removed, and the language will be exactly the same as the clause for the mayor's compensation.
I agree. I was going to make such a suggestion myself, so just strike that part of the sentence after
Yeah.
comma.
Yeah. So that's my recommendation. I don't know if you need to make a motion or what, but
It would be an
You
amendment.
want to read it the way you want it to be read, nice and slow?
nice and slow. Okay. Can we open it?
I think I know what you're saying. But I don't wanna
The,
put words in your mouth.
Yep.
Is that Section 1.
Section 1, the salary of each, the salary of each council member, Section 1, council members, the salary of each council member shall be $200 per month, but in no event shall the salary exceed $2,400 in any calendar year. Salaries will increase annually at the same rate as the cost of living increases given to other full-time employees. Compare that to the mayor's Section 2, mayor. The mayor shall receive an annual salary of $5,400 to be paid in 24 equal installments. Salary will increase annually at the same rate as the cost of living increase given to other full-time employees. So it says for council members, but in no event the salary shall exceed $2,400 in any calendar year. But actually, that's
It will in the
inaccurate.
future
It's confusing.
because, correct.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Can we rewrite to say the salary of each council member shall be $200 per month effective January 1, 2022?
Well, it already says
I think it already says
it won't
that.
be come into effect
Okay,
later.
right, and then thereafter it'd be,
Could it, well,
Just use
could I
the
write-
mayor law.
Just remove the clause.
could we just write
Each council
This
member
shall
shall
be
receive an annual salary of
of
$2,400 to be
Yeah.
paid in 26 equal installments.
Sure, same
Do
language.
y'all get paid at that?
Quarterly.
Quarterly.
Okay,
Four
why don't I
installments.
change it and write it as a quarterly statement? And it'll be $2,400, and then salaries will increase annually at the same rate as the cost of living increases given to all their full employees. So that way, I took this from the ordinance that was written back in,
Well, you can, this is actually, I mean,
something like that.
it does- it just says a salary shall be $200 a month. It doesn't say when it's paid. So
Right.
That's still okay.
So,
But the other
okay.
part is confusing.
sure, I understand that.
yeah, you can take the cap language out of there.
We can do that. Just want to bring it back.
Just bring it back.
Well, I would pass the first reading as amended, and then I'll get it
Fix it up.
rewritten. and then
With a
you'll have
friendly
second
amendment.
one next.
Yeah.
Keep this moving.
We can do that.
Keep this moving.
That's not too hard. If I screw it up in the second, you can change it again.
That's why we get 3 chances to fix
That's
it.
right.
So I move to pass the first reading of the ordinance as amended.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Hallie. It's moved by Gandy. Any other discussion?
Is this coming to us from personnel? Is that where this originated?
Yeah.
Personnel and Ways and Means.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when was the last time this was changed? I mean, when I was
20
on,
years ago.
I was gonna say, when I was on
It
council
was
in
like
2003, it was the same as
2002
what
or
it is now.
2000, yeah, something like that. That's what the ordinance that I plagiarized to rewrite this one.
So
Yeah,
it's
Mr.
been
Flo-
a long time.
Yeah, Mr. Flournoy did some
Actually, I
research on that. It's been,
didn't-
you did some work, you looked into it. It's been years, a couple of decades.
Oh, yeah, it's been 15 years or more.
Yeah,
I just wanted to be prepared to answer questions.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And these council members deserve it, in my view. Okay, so call the roll.
Gandy,
Yes.
Hallie,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Thank you. Last ordinance has to do with the mixed-use ordinance. And we'll open the public hearing. Does anyone have any comment on the mixed-use area, which is up by New Chicago? Go ahead, please state your name and your address.
Christian Stewart, 400 North 4th Street.
Thank you.
On this, I mean, I kind of looked over, I never got any notification about this, which I still am not real happy about, that they were even considering. I didn't find out about it till the second reading. This last meeting, I couldn't make it, so I haven't had a lot of time to really look this over. It affects my property, this mixed use, to a point that I am not at all in agreement with it. As well as I feel other properties around my property as well, on the mixed use. The only, I mean, and it's, I hate to kind of point out somebody in specific, there's one person that's trying to change a place across the street on 4th Street to a residential property. And that's the only person I can see within the 2-block radius of this ordinance that they're wanting to try and change that it benefits. As far as my property, I know Sokoloff also has a property there as well.
And you have a private home, is that correct?
It has an apartment above, yes. It's a automotive repair shop
Okay.
with a apartment above the property. But because it is an automotive repair shop going with this new mixed use, that would make that property, it's not a rental property as far as the apartment at this point in time, but it has been a rental property in the past. With this new ordinance, that would actually be detrimental to the property because that makes it no longer a rental property or a rental apartment.
Okay.
True.
Anybody else want to comment? Or anybody want to ask questions?
Is it currently being rented?
No, that's why I say it's not being rented right at the moment. I've actually been.
It just
doing
removes
some-
that as a possibility.
Right, but I'm just wondering if someone were living there, what impact would that have on?
As far as rental, it keeps me as the owner at the moment. I can basically what they're saying is, well, if you permit it now, then I keep it grandfathered in. But then you have to keep the permit basically going, or at any point in time, if the permit stops or isn't renewed, then it ruins that possibility. As the owner of the property, it's still a usable apartment because it can be used by the owner. It's just no longer a rental property unless it stays in, permitted. At this point, it's a rental property at any point in time. My plans are to sell it this year. And that makes it detrimental for what I have been doing at this point in my process to the building as far as resale.
Remember we talked at P&Z and what I told you then was, yes, you're losing the ability to rent that second floor apartment as long as it's an automotive shop underneath. And again, the paper said that that was to cover the city's liability. First and foremost, it's to protect the residents who may be living there from any sort of poison gas, carbon monoxide or whatnot. So that was something that was added by the legal counsel that we used when doing this ordinance. However, you or the next person who owns the property have gained a number of possible uses as well. So there's a balancing act. There aren't that many things that are being restricted under this, but you're not going to be allowed to rent apartment above any place that has any sort of chemicals underneath. Just because you wouldn't want to do that for the possibility of a lawsuit against yourself. So it's not just, I mean, I understand that that point bothers you, but you've seen the rest of the ordinance. There's other things that you're gaining as well, potentially. Or the next person you sell it to, which might make it easier to sell it.
Possibly.
Possibly. Depending on
But
what
there's
they,
no guarantee that it would.
it depends what they want it for.
Right.
So if they wanted it for an automotive shop with a rentable apartment upstairs, that's going to be a problem. But if they want it for a number of other things, then heck, you might sell it faster for a higher price. We don't know.
That is true. But at this point, it makes it, like I say, it does make it, it affects the property value possibly. And they have to make it to, I mean, at this point, it's been an apartment as far back as I can remember. I've been in Iowa since '88, and I know it was an apartment rented out. For many years, it was an apartment rented out up until, I believe 2011, when I actually halted the previous.
Why are we promoting this mixed-use ordinance? What's the reason behind it, or reasons?
Wait, you're questioning the reason behind this whole thing that
Yeah.
we've been going over for?
Yes,
time?
I'm asking.
All right, so the mixed use is designed to increase or encourage development in an area that has some blighted properties. It's designed to increase the potential for residential properties in this area by allowing first floor residents, which is why a number of the properties north of the railroad tracks volunteered to join this because they see themselves as potentially transferring over from office space to residential, or they like the idea of being allowed to mix it. And it's already very mixed use in this area. So we have the new triplexes, duplexes that Aaron was referring to. We've got the old Harper building that now has light manufacturing, has restaurants, wants to be able to do classes, wants to be able to do potentially a cafe, which is all mixed use in one property, which is currently prohibited by our code. And you have some unused, I'll just say it that way. I'm not going to make a judgment on the condition of the properties, but you have some unused properties there in New Chicago that by allowing more uses, either the current property owner or if they sell, the new property owner has more possible things they can do with it. But again, the overarching aspect to it is it's mixed use that is resident friendly. It's not mixed use that's geared towards more manufacturing or geared towards necessarily more commercial uses. It has to have that residential friendly aspect. Our legal counsel said to be defendable. Why are we doing this? Well, we can say we need more housing in this city, and so we're creating a mixed use residential friendly district.
Mr. Stewart, when was the last time someone actually used that above property as a rental?
It's, like I say, 2011 was the last.
2011?
Yes.
So that's,
I have actually had it now as personal use.
so the last time it was rented above was 10 years ago?
Right.
And interestingly enough, the owner can rent it, can stay in there. They just can't rent it.
Well, unless he can permit it.
If he gets, yeah, if he gets it done
Purchase
before
permit,
this
and
is,
he
yeah.
can grandfather it in.
But just once this is passed, that it can still be lived in, but only by the property owner.
So if he doesn't have a permit tonight, and we pass it tonight, he'd
Well,
be.
We're doing our
We're
first
just on the
reading.
first
I'm sorry,
reading
first
too,
reading.
right?
he's
So we've got two more readings.
to get the permit, if he wanted to purchase it, right?
Plus, we got,
Yeah,
it goes
they
back
said-
to P and Z, and then we got to pass 3 more readings of
Right.
changing the zoning.
So that's
The
your-
thing is that all, I guess the easiest way is for me to say that this is my property. This is a big store, metal building, that's owned by Zero Electric. These here are 2 residential homes. And then you go down, across the alleyway from my property, which is, Zocaloff's, building. And then you have the, what is it, the traders, 4th Street Traders. And then you have, the Inn building, that belongs to John Lutz, yes. I know there is apparently a new buyer that's planning on doing some remodeling or something to that building. That's, yes, John Lutz's building. So I know as far as basically on these, here, they all have living residents on 2nd floors, as well as a couple of them across the street. The only one that doesn't is this one here that belongs to, because it's a one story. So that's why I say, I mean, here, when I get right down to this block, you know, the only person I see that benefits is Miss Berkeley. So, across the railroad tracks, yes, I will agree that there's big buildings that could possibly benefit from this. These properties around this block are in the benefit. They don't.
Well, they can do first floor residential under the mixed use, which currently they can't. So that's a new use that's not currently permitted.
But at the second reading on this, Miss Berkeley was in here, and one of the first things I noticed that she mentioned right away was noise ordinance because of the restaurant. Just, you know, I mean, just a few buildings down, basically. That's already attempting to affect what is a business area. I'm an automotive shop. I don't have to worry about the, you know, loud music or anything. But that's, you know, to her that was a concern, which is obviously you're going to have that concern when you allow residents into business areas. I'll mention in the past we've had, what's his name? Wolfgang is what they refer to him. I don't actually know his name. I know he lived in a house where there's the vacant lot. They're next to the restaurant that's right there. That he just let it go. When it caught fire, everybody was happy that that place burned down. Because it was an eyesore, and he was also down at the den, or not the den, the brewery, prior to them finally getting it ready. When you have people that are residents or trying to make something residents in business, then it's, I'm pretty easy to get along with, but that was just happens to be one of those that was just a terrible person to have living in that neighborhood.
Just to let you know, that was discussed at the last P&Z about noise. There's nothing in here that's any more prohibitive about noise than any other part of the city. So there was nothing that was put in here to try to make it quieter. But you did mention that you said there are residents above on the second floor in a number of those buildings.
Yes.
So to your point, there's already residential in that area. And the people who live there probably understand, similarly to living downtown, that it's a little noisier than, say, a quiet, tucked away neighborhood.
Correct.
And that is something that they need to accept and understand if they're going to live or add more residential to this area. That is a commercial district as well. It's mixed use. So we're not expecting to try to transform it away from commercial. We're saying is we want to allow more uses so that people can do a mix, have a little bit more possibilities of what they can do, and kind of like just do something with some of those properties that are just not being utilized as much as potentially they could be. That was the idea behind it.
So you mentioned you do have the possibility of continuing with the permit once
Yes,
the,
they said that, but since I'm in the middle of redoing that apartment,
right,
unless I dedicate a lot of time specifically to that, I don't know that I can have it ready for the permit.
right.
Which, that's why I say, to me, that's what I don't like about all of what's going on, because I wasn't notified. And I'm one of the people right there
I
on
was
this
just-
property.
I was just curious what your permit would cost you annually if you.
That I do not know. as
Okay,
of yet.
because if it were another 10 years before you rented out the space, what the overall potential would be.
Yeah.
That's all right.
You want
If-
I
do
can
you-
answer that question.
Okay, that'd
It's
be,
$80 every 4 years, assuming that there's no reinspection.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So as long as he maintains that, he can have a rental
I
property
thought they said
above
it was
this.
6 months renewal.
Is that
or
per
something.
unit or per dwelling or building?
It is $80 for the first unit, and then $50 for each unit after that. And the 6-month period is, if you register your property with the city within 6 months of it becoming a rental, there's an additional fee that you don't get charged. So if we find your rental on Airbnb rather than you coming to us, then there can be a fee for not bringing it to the city.
No.
So if he
So
buys
is
a
this-
permit today, does it have to be ready to be rented, or can it be in the process of being renovated?
It has to be ready to be rented in order to pass the inspection.
What
So if
it's
you're in the
currently
middle
rented?
of renovating it, you're in a fine
Right.
to get it done in time.
That's one of the main things that, at this point, because I have a repair shop, so. As well as other things I want to do to the building at this point as well.
So is this gonna bring a permitting process along with it, passing of this ordinance? So where, like, I have an existing rental property, and it's got several units up there, so I'll have to jump through some hoops as far as permitting them or whatever?
The same process.
The same process?
It's not a
as-
new process.
It's just it's just pretty much what's been, okay. As far as the setbacks, does that include an alley when you're building a new construction? I think it was 22 feet off a major traveled road?
No.
So it doesn't include an alley? And as far as the height restriction? That was what, 30 feet?
Yep, I can answer those for you. Okay. So the height restriction is no different than anywhere else in our code, which is 30 feet. Variances have typically been given to those if there's a walkout basement situation, because that face that is the walkout basement is can be more than 30 feet. So setbacks, in no case can any structure be closer than 20 feet from the edge of the nearest travel way of a public street. That is streets, not alleys. Residential and business uses, no setbacks from the front lot or side lot, except for when you're adjoining a different district. Manufacturing, no setback from the front side yard equal or exceed the height of a building. When a lot joins a different zoning district, the more restrictive setbacks apply. That's typical for our code currently. Rear setback shall be equal to the height of the building and not less than 10 feet. So that's regardless of whether the rear is against an alley or another property. And then the setback from the railroad shall be a minimum of 10 feet. So no, if the alley is your side yard, there is no setback. And obviously if there's a building there already, only when you get to the point of like major renovation and changing the footprint of the building would any of those setbacks apply. So you can keep your existing footprint, and if you would do any remodeling, as long as you don't change the footprint, you can keep the setbacks that you currently have.
As far as, I think there's like 7 buildings in that area already that are more than 30 feet tall. The bar is.
We can look at that.
Okay, so I just wondered why 30.
So a couple amendments that planning and zoning made this last time they looked at it, which was at their meeting earlier this month, were on the conditional uses, F and G. So conditional use says it's not the same as allowable use, which is automatically allowed under the ordinance. Conditional use is you have to come and basically say what you intend and get permission. That's a pretty good way of describing it. So it does, you still need some city permission, but, yep, so on F it says meat products are conditional, but then what language that was added was with exception, live animal slaughters, and it's not allowed. Live animal slaughter is not allowed under any condition. And then the same for the milk products. I guess that got brought up because historically, back in the day, there was a slaughterhouse in that area.
They're pretty
And
smelly.
not something that would necessarily be residential friendly. And then one other thing that they took off of the conditional use was dog kennels, because the thought was they'd probably be dogs outside doing what dogs do, especially when you get a bunch of them together, making a bunch of noise. So, so planning and zoning, Melanie, can you paraphrase that really great thing that the planning and zoning board president said at the end? We were talking about that. He just,
I can just give my whole presentation if you guys want to
Well,
start at the beginning.
Paul was kind of going back to the start, like what's it all about?
Because I would like to bring that up,
We're still in public hearing.
because
Yeah, so before you go there, yeah, good point. We're still in a public hearing. Does anybody have any more comment? If not, we'll close the public hearing. And now you can discuss, Melanie.
Okay. So I want to clarify just a couple things. We'll start with how this all got started. There's been reference to a few particular property owners. This actually started from the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan had 3, what I would call mixed-use zones that they proposed. One being the downtown area, and as you know, we have in the downtown, or most business districts, we have business on the first floor, residential on the top. Then the comprehensive plan had the downtown periphery. Didn't really describe what that was going to be. And then it had what they called the Entrepreneurial Zone, and that was this area and just a little farther northwest of this area. And again, the comprehensive plan didn't define what the specifics of the mixed use were going to be. It just said, an area that allows for the entrepreneurial spirit of Fairfield and the college, and great startup place for startup businesses and things like that. didn't go into the specifics. So that's where the Economic Development Committee and then Planning and Zoning took the idea from. Now, granted, there was the triplexes that have been talked about. They were already in this area. Breadtopia was wanting to do things in the Harper Brush building. So there were some things that were moving that kind of gave us an idea as to what the area might look like. So Planning and Zoning started meeting on this about a year ago. They took a hiatus there, like from March to May. But they met several times, focusing on different things from the uses to other meetings, just looking at the setbacks. We had meetings with insurance providers, and FIDO came to a meeting to just talk about how different industries and businesses could be affected by this change. We also talked with the assessor, and the assessor makes their valuation based off of the use, not the zone. So we got that cleared up, that that's not going to change. Just this zoning change does not change the tax there. And then, so Mayor, it was maybe October or November that we had a public hearing. All of the P&Z meetings are open to the public, but then there in November, we actually mailed out to all of the residents in the area a public meeting at the Breadtopia building. So that's where, some people would say that that was the first they were notified. Well, that was the first mailing that they received. And so then Planning and Zoning has been working on this the last couple months, fine-tuning it. Really the way it was created was taking bits and pieces of our current residential zone and our current business zone and meshing it together with what would work for this combined district. So there's nothing, I shouldn't say nothing, there's not too much that's new, unique to this area. It's stuff that applies to other areas of the code, but just allows the mixed uses together. As Michael mentioned, the purpose of this is really an important thing, being able to defend, legally defend how these are all combined. And so under purpose and intent, item 2A, it says they're neighborhood-friendly businesses and manufacturing uses within the district. So, we are looking for that neighborhood-friendly option. And then as far as the boundaries, the way they were set, to the north, as Michael said, most of those were, they asked to be joined. To the west, a lot of those are residential areas anyway. The orange on the map that you see is business. So the west half of this district is already a business district that is being used as a residential. So those houses have been grandfathered in for 35 years. And so that's how we set the west line. These lines also match up with the entrepreneurial zone of the comprehensive plan. The entrepreneurial zone does go farther north, but that is as far east and west as that zone goes. So we really have been using both the existing zoning and the comprehensive plan in order to make this decision. So then P&Z has been working on this for quite a while, and Jim Horse is the chair, and he, when it passed, finally, he just thanked the commission. He felt like we had really looked, or that they had really looked into different scenarios and different options, and he felt like this was a good thing for the area as far as being able to provide more options for people. So that's all the background that we missed. I can go over specifics in the ordinance, point out anything, or we can just proceed however you'd like.
Additional questions for Melanie, Council? Doesn't look
One
like
other
it.
thing I'd like
Yeah,
to
go
say
ahead.
on the schedule. So we have to create the ordinance before we can rezone anyone. So the next 3 readings, or the 3 readings of this, is just establishing the zone. Then we'll be doing the public hearing, another public hearing, both at the P&Z level and here, to physically rezone those properties. So there'll actually be a total of 6 public hearings on this subject before this is finalized. And the public hearing for the rezone, the property owners that are affected get a certified mail notice of that meeting.
So what's the drop dead date for Mr. Stewart's situation?
July 1, probably by the time we get everything published.
He'd need to buy a permit by that date.
Yeah.
Only because he's got a garage underneath him.
But they would be grandfathered in with that apartment. I was just wondering what the date was. It's not the third reading.
As
It'll
long
be-
as I get an actual, I mean, I do know that I did bring that up here at the one meeting I was at, that I haven't gotten no mailings of any of this since all this event began. So the thing of Redtopia, I mean, that, to even hear about that now, I hadn't heard anything about that. So am I actually gonna get a letter on this?
I guess I'm not sure where I mean, I can check as to whether that got returned for that address or not. I don't believe that any got returned.
I was told that there was something that for some reason my address was kind of overlooked on
Okay.
that, even though it's right dead center in it, so.
So from here, Melanie, you're saying approximately it's going to be 4.5 months where Mr. Stewart's going to have notice to provide or apply for a permit. Is that correct? 4.5 months?
Earliest might be later.
To have a permit.
To have a
apply.
rental permit.
Yeah.
Either to have one or to apply for
Well, he
one.
has to renovate the apartment, get suitable,
Right.
pass inspection, buy a permit.
So you got 4.5 months for that.
Sounds like it.
Yes. Longer if, you want to table any
So-
of these motions or send it back to P and Z or anything.
If he wanted to do that, Scott could come in and tell him what has to be done by that date in order to qualify to
We have
pass
a,
inspection.
we have a checklist that he can get from planning and zoning. Scott can come do it, but then that's considered a re-inspect, so.
Okay, I just was looking for advice. and-
Yeah, but we do have a checklist that we offer to property owners.
Okay, any other discussion? Questions? Not, is there a motion to move this forward to the second reading? Or a table?
I'll make a motion to move it to the second reading.
Okay, moved by Toohill,
Second, yeah, I think there's enough time here. I'll second.
second by Gandy. Any other discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Toohill,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Hallie,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Yes,
Ham,
Yes.
Thank you. Under the mayor's report tonight, I have two appointments. They're both for the museum board, Mary Keller and Karen Price. They're replacing Barb Siren and Nikki Gilchrist. I'm sorry, did the council get these copies?
not at our, no.
So sorry about that.
okay.
Mary Keller is Mary of used to be Bob's Automotive, and she's going to be helping computer and booking experience. She's got a lot of that, so they need data input for the museum. And so she'll be, I think, probably taking over that role. Karen Price has been a teacher for 37 years. She's interested in developing curriculum materials for the museum, designing interactive self-tours, reaching out to classrooms for field trips, and publicizing the museum in the community. And so anyway, I think both of these are good replacements. They should work well with the board, and the board has recommended these people. So with that, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Anderson,
Second.
second by Ham. Any other discussion? Not all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Thank you. February, I wanted to point out that February is Black History Month, and thought I'd give you a little history lesson. Carter Woodson, known as the father of Black history, developed Black History Month. He was the second African American to earn a PhD at Harvard University. And in 1926, he proposed a National Negro History Week, which was intended to showcase everything students learned about Black history throughout the school year. February 1st was named, oh wait a minute, before I go there, Woodson chose the second week of February to coincide with with the birthdays of Frederick Douglass, a famed abolitionist who escaped from slavery, and President Abraham Lincoln, who formally abolished slavery. So February 1st was known as National Freedom Day, the anniversary of the approval of the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery in 1865. And then in 1949, President Harry Truman recognized National Freedom Day and urged citizens to pause to contemplate its significance. It was not until 1976, during the height of the Civil Rights Movement, that President Gerald Ford expanded the week into Black History Month. So I encourage people to go to your computers, Google, and learn something this month about Black history. I think it would be all useful for us to do that. I encourage people to do that. Also, I think we're going to start getting comments. You know, the governor did change some rules regarding COVID and restrictions, etc. So, but we're going to encourage citizens to continue what they're doing and not change that. Businesses will be allowed to do what they do, but I think here, I have a feeling that people will continue to encourage mask wearing at their business, and we'll go forward with that. The last thing that I wanted to mention is tonight in my mailbox I got some information, and I knew this was happening, but I got some additional information. There's going to be, at the state level, there's two bills. There's a House file and a Senate file, and it has to do with dogs and dog ordinances at the city level. The state wants, there's these two files are taking away dog specific breeds at the city level. So they are basically chipping away, if you will, at local control. Our current ordinance does have dog specific breeds in them. I remember when this was trying to be passed, that actually was something that came up, that some of the breeds that were in our current ordinance, it leaves out other breeds that are dangerous, but I think at the time they tried to do the best they could. So I think this is worth looking at to see how it affects our city and how we want to move, if we want to comment on this at all. And I'd like to see, again, sorry, public safety, take a look at it. And Katie knows dogs. So if that's okay with you, I think since it does affect our ordinance, I think we should look at it. And I would take a motion, if that's okay, to move this to Safety Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Gandy, second by Flournoy. Any discussion?
Yes, would it be worthwhile at this point to call in our animal, we have an animal commission of some type? I'm asking the chair of the safety committee. I don't
They
know.
wouldn't have a say on our ordinance, so, I mean, they could sure chime in. And I think, I mean, we do have a veterinary on that and a couple other valuable inputs. We could ask who could attend a public safety committee, but ultimately any change to the ordinance is gonna have to come
Right,
from
right,
council.
perhaps they'll get noticed like everyone else, but it may be something worth
That
alerting them
board
to.
exists for the sole purpose of looking at
Specific incident.
if somebody has a dog or an animal that's the city says you must get rid of, they can appeal to that board. They're just an appeal board, they're not a policy board.
I'm not expecting them to make policy, but they can certainly give input.
Yeah, but not as a board. I mean, you can ask the individuals to come and all.
members of the commission could be invited. I think it would make sense.
Not the body.
Right.
Yeah. And, yeah, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign? Okay, great. Can you pass that down to Katie?
Yep.
That's what I got today. I gave a copy to Mr. Morrissey as well, so he can look through this. City attorney report. Do you have anything, John, tonight?
Wanted to report, we have finally made some progress on the Midwest ambulance lawsuit that's been pending for 10 months. The attorney for the plaintiff Midwest has sent us a draft release now, which could end it. It also expects that I will draft a covenant not to sue and a dismissal form that is different than the release. I'm supposed to meet with the county attorney and the two attorneys related to the hospital and representing different individual sued as well as the entity itself. So I'm expecting probably over the next 30 days we should be able to reach agreement on what those documents are all going to look like. Mr. Gandy and I talked before the meeting a little bit because he's one of the named defendants, and I'd like to get this over. It's really it's one of those situations where we kind of put it to the other side. If you are serious about ending this, we'll all the four attorneys on the defense are all agreeable to something we did in a memo of understanding that carved out these three documents. We just got to get the fine print in front of everybody's signature. So I hope to bring you back something one of the next couple meetings that will be all three of those documents for our approval. But the rest of the story is apparently the reasons for bringing the suit in the first place didn't pan out, I guess is the way I would put it. And so I think we can look forward to being done with that. Other than that, I would comment for just 1 minute on your dog legislation. I skimmed it, and I've seen it in one of our municipal attorneys' publications also, that these bills, they're anti-home rule. They intend to interfere with our legislative process, which we spent about 3 months adopting the animal control ordinance that we have. Michael's right about the Animal Control Review Board was just one of a dozen pages of things that are in that ordinance that puts another avenue there for people that are animal owners to work out a grievance or try to protect their animal in ways that we regulate. But really, when you start talking about our local ordinances and what we're entitled to regulate, when the legislature starts telling us how to deal with our dogs and cats, I think it's overreach. And I know that the literature that the mayor has and that I've seen in our municipal attorney's publication urge us to say something to our representatives and our senators about just don't go there. So that's pretty much my view.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Committee and board reports, Ways and Means.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate your words earlier. The Ways and Means Committee has met a couple of times regarding and reviewing the city's fiscal 2022 fiscal year budget. We met for a total of a little bit more than 4.5 hours on January 23rd and February 3rd, but there are countless hours put into developing the proposed budget by city staff, by department heads, and we had the opportunity to review that budget. The budget was something like over 130 pages, and at the meetings each time would be Aaron Koiker, our city administrator, Rebecca Loper, our city clerk. At one of the meetings, the mayor was present, as was the fire chief, Scott Vaughn. At each of the meetings, all of the committee was present, myself, Katie Anderson, and Doug Flournoy, and we looked very carefully at the budget. We asked questions. We got good answers from the city staff, and we think we have a budget that we feel comfortable in recommending to the city as we go through the process of coming to the deadline, of meeting the deadline, which is March 31st, and approving that budget or certifying that budget. We talked about a number of issues. I pointed out in the notes a couple of things that were discussed in some depth. One, at the January 23rd meeting, we discussed the issue having to do with, I believe we discussed an increase in fees for solid waste disposal. We understand that's going to be subject, a city ordinance is going to be necessary in order to effect that change. We, at the second meeting, which was on February 3rd, we discussed a number of other issues, including we set a proposed allocation for the local option sales tax, and also we discussed the Fairfield Arts and Convention Center ask for additional funding. And we made, in that discussion and in that meeting, some suggestions of changes to the proposed budget, and we've come to the point where we've recommended that proposed budget as we've determined to be approved by the city. And one particular point that I think Mr. Flournoy wants to speak to had to do with our discussions regarding the Fairfield Arts and Convention Center budget, our request for additional funds. I'd have to ask him to comment on that if he would.
Right, so in the lost a letter from the convention center to the city had asked for $60,000 to support this year for building maintenance. Or did they specify it that way?
60% or $60,000
$60,000
for support of the Civic Center.
Right.
or Convention Center.
And in the budget that we reviewed, $50,000 of lost money was allocated to the convention center. So at the February 3rd meeting, I asked the committee to consider, if you look at the adoption of budget certification of city taxes, the 51-476 sheet, which delineates the individual taxing authorities we have to get to the rate, the mill rate for the property owners. On the non-voted other permissible levies, the third line down, labeled 12 parens 11, rent, insurance, and maintenance of Civic Center, I asked the committee to put in 2 cents for the support of the Civic Center. If you put in 1 penny, it will raise about $4,000. So if we put in 2 pennies there, that would raise $8,000 with the $50,000 we have allocated to the Civic Center through the lost monies. We would about meet their request. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that the committee had discussed that and was going to recommend that 2 cent levy for the Civic Center.
I would add that the city's financial condition, as far as we could observe, the committee, as we could observe, and based on our conversation with the city administrator and city clerk, the city is in a very strong financial condition, very strong financial condition. It is now, and going forward, it's going to maintain that strong, actually it's going to improve over time. So we're very fortunate in these sort of unstable times to have a city government, a city administration that financially is quite sound.
Great, thank you.
Can I ask one question about that allocation? Was it specifically for the Arts and Convention Center building maintenance, or is it open-ended spending?
I made a checked with Department of Management. If we have an agreement with someone to run our Arts and Convention Center, those funds can be given to them to run and maintain the building. The thought process in Ways and Means, however, is as we're finishing up the negotiations for the lease also, is that we focus those on maintenance of the building.
I don't feel like that was an answer. Are they specifically for maintenance, or can they just allocate all that towards operation, salary, et cetera?
It's my intention that it would be for maintenance of the building.
With our intent with the negotiation of the lease is that they be focused towards maintenance of the building. Legally, which is what I was getting
Oh,
at
so
at the start.
we can't tell them,
No, we can,
we can,
in the lease.
in the lease.
Legally, we can give them the money and they could do whatever they wanted with it.
I see.
But with our lease specifics, we could say, this is what it's for.
So the lease, the new lease, what you're saying, or the
Correct.
potentially amended version of what's already in place.
Yeah,
Where we say any funds coming from the city shall be used for
maintenance of the building.
maintenance of the facility.
Does it have to be in the lease? Because we have, the other lost funds, we decide how that money will be spent when we allocate it to the various groups or within the city even.
Right, but their request wasn't specific for that. It was just
Right.
a request for
Money.
support.
Right, I'm just saying,
So-
when we approve it, even if it's not in the lease agreement, we can still designate it for a specific use, can't we?
Correct. We could, yes.
So we would be covered either direction. I think we should put it in the lease agreement, though.
I agree.
Okay.
Just so it's clear and it's written down, we all know we're on the same page.
Aaron, can you tell us what the next steps are going to be before we get to the point where we certify the budget, as far as the council's
The
involvement?
next step is the public hearing for the max levy, which is not certifying the budget. It is saying that the city is intending to use the maximum amount of levy that we have available to us, which will give us a 2.3% growth from last year's budget, which is more than the 2%, which it's more than the 2% allowable growth statement, which is why we have to do the max levy. And we approve that at the next meeting, and then the next meeting after that, we then approve the budget with, with the public hearing, we'll have the public hearing for the budget, and then the budget is approved, and that's the first meeting in March.
And Ways and Means to discuss CIP.
Oh, yeah, we gotta have a CIP,
Thank you.
capital
Yeah,
improvement.
forgot about that. Yeah.
A meeting with, Ways and Means to approve the capital improvement plan.
That's right. Thank you, Melanie, for recalling that. That was on the agenda for the last meeting, February 3rd, but we decided, we tabled that discussion. We don't yet have the CIP to review, so we will be doing that in the future.
Because of Park and Rec Board not getting to meet, discussing the funds that they have available to them, and some large tasks that are in Melanie's office, she hasn't completely been able to finalize that yet. So that's a little bit outside of her control, so that's why we're holding that.
Okay.
What's that?
You're cutting me a break.
I am. So that's why we're giving her a little bit more time to get the CIP together.
Thank you, Mayor.
Great. Anything more on public safety and transportation, Katie?
We had 4 items on our agenda that we met prior to the meeting tonight. The first was a sidewalk on 23rd. We decided not to take any action on that to bring before council. We discussed earlier the bike lane that was presented to us. We did give FrenchReneker a little bit of permission to move forward with that, but report back to us before we hit bidding to see if we want to take that liability on. We discussed the sidewalks on 9th Street, which is the road that runs in front of Park and Rec, taking sidewalks from Burlington to more or less the Park and Rec parking lot. For the time being, we're going to include replacement of the sidewalks when it goes to bid. And then we're going to cost analysis, how much it's going to cost at committee again, and see if we want to proceed with that. We have some concerns as a committee that the city would jump on board with replacing sidewalks. But it is to one of our biggest assets in town. So we want to level that out. So it'll be part of a bid, then we'll review it and see if we want to proceed with that. And that would obviously come back to council. And then we discussed the analysis of the 2 locations that are being considered for the fire station. There's been a recommendation that a task force be created to help with discussions with who's the cleaner, and interact with cleaner. And the committee thought that was a great idea, and so they're going to move forward with still analyzing both the locations as viable or not viable, and it involves some community feedback in that process. So again, nothing really action item, but important. Just updates on 4 things going on in town.
Okay, great. Administrator and department reports.
You'll see you have a large stack of papers in front of you that Rebecca made copies of for you. That is the paper document of the version of the city code that was given to us from Simmer and Corey. If you look at the codification review schedule, all of the department heads have been instructed to get their reviews of their sections accomplished actually prior to the next council meeting. So at that point, the committees and boards, or the committees or from the council can then start should be looking, you individually, council members should be looking at it now. But then we should start meeting as committees to address questions and issues that you find in the code so that we can get this returned back to Simmer and Corey for a final draft.
Bye.
Let's hope, well, the department heads are going to be doing that by next council meeting, so that's the 22nd. Let's hope to have this done by the end of April. How's that? Are you okay with that, council? It's aggressive. I know.
Might be a little fast.
It's aggressive, but
The tax season coming up.
I mean, we've only had this done for, well, when did you guys start this?
7,000 years
pouring
ago.
over this. I expect you pouring over
Sorry,
this.
like 4 years ago.
Yeah,
Years
it was
ago.
before I got here, so, so it's been
Long.
more than 3 years in the making.
Is that it?
That's all I've got for tonight.
Do you
No.
really just say, this is it?
Sorry. Nothing from Melanie? Okay. Nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Toohill,
Second.
second by Flournoy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned.